Sorry about that.
No
I'll
worries.
see if I can find it.
We'll make it work.
Do I get it back?
You get it back. I'll use
Okay.
it.
We're not gonna start a fire.
I was planning.
We promise.
Thank you guys for showing.
I gave you the markers here. But you know what though? I hope that people show up.
So just give it a couple of minutes for the official start time.
I've seen it on the graduate studies page.
No. Yeah, no, this is.
I mean, it's playing on the graduate studies page at least.
Evidently this laptop is not compatible. And I can't keep it.
Okay. Thank you very much. We're at 2 o'clock. Are we good to start, or?
Let's take 1 or 2 more minutes. Rebecca's trying to get on my screen and it's not connecting.
Okay.
Is the lighting working out? Is that okay for you?
Oh, yeah.
And everybody can see?
We're good? Okay, so let's get started. Welcome to the Thesis and Dissertation Preparation Workshop. I'm Scott Kirkby. I'm an Associate Dean with the Graduate School. I can be reached at kirkby@etsu.edu, and that's my phone number. Have a usual caveat, don't forget the second K, kirby@etsu.edu won't respond. So, what we're going to look at is preparing to start your thesis or dissertation, and what you need to do. Read your catalog. This will take you from your program from start to finish. So your catalog is the catalog year in which you started. You can move to later years, but not to earlier years. It will give you the specific process that depends on your program, on what you need to do, on how to select a research advisor and or a committee. And so as always, our recommendation is talk to your graduate program coordinator. They will have the specifics for your program. So finding a topic and a committee. Again, this tends to vary from program to program. The sciences, you're kind of stuck with what the research advisors are funded to do and have the equipment to do. Arts and humanities, you're a bit more flexible. So brainstorm an idea. What interests you about your discipline? Why are you here? Something about why you decided to go to graduate school in your program interested you about that program, or at least hopefully it did. Discuss the topic. Find a faculty member who has similar interests and discuss your ideas with that person. What ideas do they have for your interests? What does the scholarship say about your topic? A thesis or dissertation is meant to be an original piece of scholarship. You need to find part of your area where you can make that original contribution to. Select a committee chair. Again, in the sciences, biomed, your research advisor is your committee chair automatically. That's not the case everywhere. You also need to select a committee. For a master's, committee is 3, including your chair, typically. For a doctoral level, it's 5, including your chair. You're looking for people that can contribute to your thesis or dissertation work. Contribute intellectually, contribute support, bring expertise to your work that they can contribute to and that you can learn from. So when you're selecting a chair, find somebody who's diligent, interested, and whom you can work with well. The best person to be your chair is not necessarily everyone's best person to be their chair. So find somebody that is a good fit for you. For the committee, same criteria, but not quite so extreme. Discuss people who might be appropriate choices with your chair and with the committee members themselves. Remember, all this is voluntary. You can't make somebody agree to be your chair. You can't make somebody agree to serve on your committee. So you're looking for people who are interested in what you want to do. When you're talking to them, think of it as a bit of a mini job interview. You want to put a good face forward so that they'll want to participate in your thesis and dissertation process. Okay. What will be expected from the different members? Will they provide feedback? It's always best to work out the arrangements in advance so there are no surprises later. When you have a committee identified, work with your graduate coordinator and your graduate program specialist to fill out the necessary forms. Every university is a bureaucracy. Nothing happens without the bureaucracy getting its paperwork. So you need a committee form. This formalizes your committee. Members of your committee, must have graduate faculty status. They have to be active in the graduate education component of the university. This isn't a major hurdle for regular faculty member, they almost all are, but it is something to factor in. So typically lecturers or adjuncts don't fit this bill. You also need to complete your candidacy form when you're ready. This notifies your graduate school that you're at that stage in your program. You also need to complete your program of study. It's the plan of your courses that will meet your degree requirements. Each program has very specific sets of courses they need for their degree requirements. Your program of study makes sure that everyone involved knows which among the choices you need to make you've selected. So you turn these forms in. Ideally, by the end of your first year, keep stamped, dated copies. Things do get lost, unfortunately. If you have a copy, it's a lot easier to make another one than it is to start from scratch and have to circulate the forms for additional signatures. Make changes before you register for thesis or dissertation hours. Once you start registering for thesis and dissertation hours, things tend to get much more locked in than before that. Things can be changed, just the paperwork's a little more onerous. So many programs require that you write a prospectus before you start your thesis and dissertation work. So prospectus may be called different things in different programs, but it's essentially a proposal. You're proposing to a committee as to what your project will involve. So for the specifics, they do depend on your discipline. Talk to your thesis advisor, your dissertation advisor, talk to your graduate program coordinator. I'm going to repeat myself a lot saying that. Talk to your committee chair, talk to your graduate program coordinator. So construct a document that your committee can approve. When you're writing anything, any kind of proposal, make the review committee's job easy. If they have a specific set of questions that they want you to answer in your prospectus, make sure you explicitly answer those questions. Headings are wonderful for this. Don't make them work too hard to find the information they want. They want to approve it, you want them to approve it, make it easier for them. Meet regularly with your committee and your thesis chair to keep them posted regarding your progress and keep you honest about making progress. Unlike an undergrad, timelines in graduate school tend to be a little more flexible, a little more elastic. It is very easy to think of yourself as being busy and realize a year or two has passed and you've made no progress on your dissertation. It takes as long as it takes. So if you spend your time doing other things, you're never getting to the end. You probably will need other approvals if you involve human subjects. So if you involve human subjects, you'll need the Institutional Review Board, which governs all human subject research on this campus. You will need their approval or their agreement that you do not need their approval for anything involving human subject research. Also, there are committees for animal care, controlled drugs, DNA, and other identifiable human information. Radiation, hazardous materials, each one requires approval. So the IRB, you can get their paperwork at the /IRB website. How do you know if you need IRB approval? Read their information at formsdoc.html. So if you need IRB approval, follow through. Okay. Do not collect any data at all of any way, shape, or form if you need IRB approval without having IRB approval in place. To conduct human subject research without IRB approval is against university policy, against state law, and against federal law. Your data will be at best unpublishable and useless. At worst, it's a major violation of research ethics, and you can be dismissed from the program for that. IRB approval tends to not be the speediest thing in the universe, so make sure you know what you need to do, have it submitted early. Just because the IRB is slow is not an excuse. Your research cannot start until they've approved it if their approval is required. Similarly, if you need any other approvals, animal care, radiation, you can't work without those approvals. All of these things are governed by university policy as well as applicable state and federal legislation. You break the law, you won't stay in your program. So, once you have your research and your writing, for programs with research courses, register for research. For programs with thesis and dissertation courses, register for thesis and dissertation. If your program has both, discuss with your research advisor and/or your graduate program coordinator which you should register for which. In the sciences, at the master's level, you tend to register for research and then at the end register for thesis. This isn't how it works for every program. Educational leadership, you register for dissertation right from the beginning. There's no separate set of research courses. Or the research courses they do have are methodology courses. They're not doing research courses. So, continuous enrollment is required once you've registered for thesis or dissertation hours. That includes summer. Now you can register for the whole summer as one thing, but once you have taken that first thesis or dissertation hour, you must stay continuously registered. Fall, spring, and summer. Winter session is part of spring here officially. So, only you can figure out what works best for you. The method you choose is the method that works. So I work on projects for pieces at a time every day. I have a lot of different tasks I have to perform. I have a lot of different responsibilities. If I put something off until I have a large block of time, it might go months before I have a large block of time because of competing demands. So I piece it out a little bit. So I benefit from lots of ongoing projects, and I can chip away at things daily. Also, if I have many students working on different projects, then we're working together. I can't spend all of one time for one student and ignore everybody else for weeks on end. So others find methods of that method of work distracting. They need larger blocks of time. They're dedicated to a single task. So do that. Cram all your commitments into a block to free up a bigger block. Schedule appointments with yourself to work on your thesis or dissertation. Again, it's really easy to neglect your time. You're busy doing other things that are important. But if you don't get it done, it takes as long as it takes, so you can be here for a long time. So, I am a chemist. Specifically, I'm a physical chemist, so I tend to take everything from that viewpoint. So, take pride in what you write. Construct your sentences. There's nothing wrong with simple, declarative statements. Read the best authors in your area that are publishing to get examples of what good research prose looks like for your area. I'm not a fan of making it seem important by throwing lots of large adjectives at things and burying it in obscure jargon. If you can't understand what you're writing, how do you expect anybody else to understand what you're writing? So, aim for the active voice, active verbs to enhance the eloquence, aim for clarity. Literature review section of your thesis or dissertation is usually chapter 1 in the standard format. It's a summary of the current state of the research in your topic. And it really is a summary of the current state of the research. It's not an exhaustive survey of everything possible that's ever been done. Connect it to your contribution. Tie it in. Make this section matter rather than just being a bit of trivia to check off as you move off to the next section. In the not so good old days, a thesis or dissertation tended to get microfilmed, stored in the library archives, and except for the next person at your university that was working on that project, probably nobody except your parents and grandparents saw it after it was done. That's not how it works anymore. With electronic thesis and dissertation publishing, we use Digital Commons. The average ETSU thesis gets read 10 times a year. Who reads them? That next student. Yourself, your parents, your grandparents probably browsed at it just to see it, but also potential employers. If you're a master's program, people in admissions committees and doctorates programs, There are a lot there. This will be seen. It's important that it be quality work. People will judge the quality of your research by the quality of your thesis and dissertation. If it looks rushed and sloppy, they'll assume the research was rushed and sloppy. If it's badly written, they'll assume that's the best you could do. If your figures are blurry and illegible, they'll assume that's how much you cared for them to understand your research. Okay. Go to the original work. Do not rely on secondary sources. Nature did an experiment several years ago where they were looking at the error rate in Wikipedia. The authors set out to basically try to lower the credibility of Wikipedia by pointing out that it has a fairly high error rate in it. What was really disappointing to the authors was other secondary sources like encyclopedias, like textbooks, didn't have that much better an error rate. So go to the primary literature if at all possible. So, writing problems. Academic misconduct is an issue that you should avoid at all costs. Understand where the problem areas are and don't go there. So, fabrication, plagiarism, other practices that deviate from commonly accepted practices for proposing, conducting, or reporting research. This is all part of the same. Fabrication is making stuff up. Plagiarism, of course, using other people's ideas as your own. It does not include error or honest differences in interpretation or judgment. So if you're a scientist, you conduct an experiment and you do it wrong, but you don't know you did it wrong, that's not academic misconduct. It is academic misconduct if you know you did it wrong and you included the results anyway. So, dishonest reporting of results, fabricating results, changing data, negligence in collecting data, analyzing or selective reporting. You have a whole pile of results, but you only keep the ones that are useful to you. That's selectivity in reporting your data. Omitting conflicting data, you did that extra replicate and it completely disagreed with all of them, so you just said, can't be bothered. Okay. As professions, we take this stuff very seriously. Expensive decisions get made based on academic research. Right? If you're in the medical research area and millions of dollars in treatment or drug development costs depend on your research, it has to be honest. Right? Reproducibility is a problem enough, and that's with people working honestly without dishonest efforts. Plagiarism, which is use or taking credit for the work or ideas of others without proper acknowledgement or permission, is an issue. Keep in mind, there's no statute of limitations on these things. The case that I think is the longest between defense of a thesis and its publication and revoking it for plagiarism was over 30 years. And if you're wondering, it was a teacher in Canada, and the school board sued the teacher for all their pay, claiming that they only got the job because of the fraudulently obtained degree. The school board won its case, bankrupted the person, and so the person is now 70-something, bankrupt, no pension, and no career. There is no statute of limitations. If it's found, it can be dealt with. So there's also abuse of confidentiality or the legitimate expectations of confidentiality. This comes up sometimes with human subject research. IRB will require you to describe what you will do with your human subjects, and they require that you have a release that describes accurately to your subjects what will occur during the research and what will occur with their data. IRB and the university as a whole aren't particularly concerned about confidentiality or not confidentiality. We are concerned about honesty. So if you tell the subject, we're going to put your photograph and all this information in the thesis and identify who you are so that everyone who reads it will know who you are, and the subject agrees with that, and IRB says that's fine from the university and the graduate school's perspective. If you say you're going to keep everything confidential, then it better be confidential. Where it comes in is if you have tables of demographic information. So if you say that you have a subject that's I'll make stuff up, 45-year-old African-American female with 2 kids aged 7 and 10 that was taking English 1010 in fall 2017. Individually, each one of those data points probably are not identifiable to that person. Collectively, Google is not your friend in this, and it's really easy to find out who people are, what classes they took, where they're employed, how many kids they have, what their kids' ages are at a particular point in time, and so on and so forth. Again, if you need to use these characteristics connected, make sure you get the right consent and the right approvals. Okay. Misrepresentation of the research, including progress to your committee. You tell your boss, yeah, I did all this, here's the results, and it's fake. Even if it doesn't reach publication level, that's still misconduct. Knowing inclusion of materials that will misread your readers is a problem. Right? Honesty everywhere, all the time. Further, if they're violation of federal, state law and regulations and university regulations, these are problems. So, how to avoid it? Just don't go there. Accurately present your findings and their sources. Nobody ever got in trouble for too many citations. Okay. Take good notes to document the sources of their findings. Don't use bad practices. If you're going to paraphrase something, don't cut and paste the original in and say you'll modify it later. Only put your paraphrase in. Don't put the original in. Use Turnitin. So when you're ready to submit your thesis, your committee chair will have a D2L site with Turnitin enabled that you can upload your thesis or dissertation to generate a Turnitin report. Have your advisor turn off archiving or submitting to the database of that, and you can run it through and check. We don't care about the details of the results unless there's something significant. So the fact that lots of other people use the same citations as you isn't surprising to us. The fact that they get flagged and turn it in because they're in a standard form isn't a problem. It is a problem if you cut and pasted a paragraph and didn't put it in quotes and have the right citation. Yeah. Especially if you're going to have your non-final versions, so your earlier drafts, run it through Turnitin to check. Make sure you turn off the archiving, otherwise it will cite you as you for the next trip through, and that'll make the report very difficult to interpret. So if you're having difficulties with writing, you can look at the Center for Academic Achievement here in Sherrod, provide assistance with style and grammar. It is not an editing service. There are private editing services that are available. They do cost, and it's not trivial. My opinion of editing services is a bit mixed. Remember, it's your work, not their work. You can't pay to have your thesis done for you. That's misconduct, obviously. And some of them are better than others, or better to help you with particular programs than others. To use myself as an example, I don't do editing as a service, but for chemistry students, I can help them because I know what a chemistry thesis is supposed to be like. If it was English, I probably would be useless for that. Okay. Every semester, fall, spring, and summer, there are thesis and dissertation completion scholarships. The scholarship will pay for up to 6 hours of readings and research or thesis and dissertation. It pays a maintenance fee and out-of-state tuition parts. It does not pay the program or course fees, but it will help you pay for that continuous enrollment for that last summer or that last semester if you're past a GA or if you never had a GA. Okay. We also, through the graduate school, have thesis or dissertation bootcamp. It's a dedicated set of weekends to have some assistance in the writing here in the library, free of distractions to work on your manuscript. So, before your last semester, make sure you file your intent to graduate on time. Again, bureaucracy has to have its paperwork. No intent to graduate, guess what? You don't graduate. Schedule your oral defense. There are deadlines posted on the calendar every semester to know when you have to schedule it by in order to finish that semester. You submit a notification of oral examination form to the graduate school with a copy of your abstract to schedule. There has to be an outside observer scheduled. An outside observer is a graduate faculty member who is not on your committee that attends to make sure that university policies for a defense are followed. The style varies slightly from program to program, but there are generalities that must be observed. Okay. Distribute copies of your thesis and dissertation to all committee members. Talk to your committee members as to what their expectations are, how far in advance of your defense they need to have that version of your dissertation. A good committee member will spend a significant amount of time preparing for your defense. They have to read it, make any recommendations for changes that they want, and have questions prepared. Okay. How far in advance is up to them. Some of us are more rigid than others. I set a minimum of 1 week. If I don't have it on time, we're rescheduling or I'm voting no before we get started.
Bless you.
Gesundheit.
Bless you.
There's no point defending a thesis that isn't in defendable form. Okay, defend your thesis. It is a program-specific process, but it will often involve a presentation to the public and then some question and answer session for the public, and then a private question and answer session with your committee. Okay, the outside observer will submit an oral defense report to make sure everything happened the way it was supposed to happen. The usual result from your defense is that your committee will have a set of recommendations for changes. Some of them will be suggestions, some of them will be you must do this or I'm not agreeing to it category. Work with your committee to get it in final form. Okay. Chair and committee approval is needed before submitting your thesis or dissertation to the graduate school for review. So the electronic thesis and dissertation system is electronic only submission. The electronic system improves access, allows for non-paper based components, visual components like pictures, audio, video, etc. You can use sound. Take advantage of this if it's appropriate for your thesis. Get support early. Read the guide. You're taking the first step in attending this workshop. So, approval. Your manuscript represents a blending of disciplinary and graduate school formatting guidelines. Take a look at the electronic thesis and dissertation guide that's on the EDT website. It will help you with the formatting there. The goal is to create a stable, sophisticated, comprehensive word processing file that will get turned into a nice, high-quality PDF. So when those potential doctoral admissions committees, potential employers look at that work, they think it was a quality manuscript. I think it was quality work because it looks like it was quality work. Okay. Make sure to obtain permission for use of copyrighted materials. Directly copied images, tables, figures, etc. require permission. Most academic publishers, most major academic publishers have an online form for students to submit permission requests for their journals. These major publishers, this is a quick process. Again, I'm a chemist, so my example is the American Chemical Society. All their journals have these forms, and they promise 24-hour turnaround and essentially automatic approval for use in theses and dissertations. The other end is a very small publisher that went out of business several decades ago, and the copyright has bounced around to the people who bought the copyrights from that publisher. Again, failure to get permission or the inability to get permission does not remove you from the obligation to have permission. It takes as long as it takes. Some small publishers have been known to take months. Don't leave it to the last minute. So modified materials need to be cited as adapted. Okay. So follow the formatting guidelines from the thesis and dissertation guide for the front and end matter. You can choose between the standard and the alternate format. The standard format is essentially 4 or 5 chapters, starting with your literature review, but the specifics to each chapter depend on your program. The alternate format is Chapter 1 literature review, Chapter 5 summary discussion, and the middle chapters are manuscripts of your published papers in manuscript form for those publications. Yep.
There's some departments that are approved for the alternate format and some are not. I don't think approval is, going to keep people out, but I do believe if your department does not have approval, then you need to check on that, or just check if you have approval to choose the alternate format.
Yep. Sorry, my oversight.
Okay.
Okay. So follow the formatting guidelines for your discipline: American Chemical Society, Chicago Manual Style, American Philosophical Association, Modern Languages Association, et cetera, et cetera. Remember that the APA now requires, if available, the unique DOI code, so document identifier code for all electronic citations. I think most of them now do as well. I think APA is the most commonly used one. Use another thesis or dissertation as a supplemental guide, but not a model. Okay. Make use of digital commons. You can download something, take a look at it. Okay, it should be one single Word file with several chapters, so it gets turned into a single PDF in a seamless form. I guess as an editorial comment, Word was not really designed to produce books, so it might be better if you take your individual chapters, get them into final form, then assemble them into a single document, rather than try to build that document from scratch all the way through. Word tends to not like big images embedded in once you get too many of them. So if you have a lot of figures that are graphical, pictorial, and the like, you might be better off working with smaller files and then assembling it at the end. So, alternate, if I hadn't spoken out of turn, must be approved by your program. Program must have permission to do that. Beginning and ending are like the standard format, but the middle chapters are from selected and accepted journals in the discipline, again in manuscript form. So it's all outlined in the formatting guidebook. Most important thing to know, everyone that has your degree has already been successfully through this process. You can do it. Any questions? Okay. So either I was completely thorough, or I've completely bored you so silly that you can't think of anything right now. Okay. Keep in mind, if anything does come up, feel free to contact me. Feel free to contact Ms. Red. We're here to help you get it right. Yes?
Okay, for that alternative format, how many manuscripts should include? Is it 1 or 2?
I'm not familiar with a maximum, but I've not seen one that's less than 2. Are they allowed 1?
1 for a master's thesis, 3 or more for
Doctoral?
doctoral. I don't know if there's a more or less. That's just the standard of what is accepted.
When I was trying to do the alternative format, I was told I cannot have, like it was my committee, I cannot have less than 2.
If that's for master's level? Doctorate?
I need to double check our guide, but there is a parameter, and it's in the thesis guide under the alternate format section. It does state 1 for the master's students and 3, but I need to remind myself that's at least, or,
Yeah.
but it's in there. I could pull it up now if we want to.
Yep.
And we don't have anybody left online, so we don't need to repeat anything.
Okay. So, I mean, as a practical matter, your committee can always set a higher standard for you than the minimum. though that would not necessarily be as nice as could be.
All right, one journal article or conference paper for a thesis, including the abstract, or a series of journal articles or conference papers, including abstracts, presented as separate numbered chapters for a dissertation. The only restriction I remember being in here was the final chapter. Dissertations must have a final chapter that integrates and discusses the material, but a thesis advisory committee may or may not require that. But as far as what you were asking, this is chapter 2, one journal article for a thesis or a series for a dissertation. So it looks like there's some wiggle room for the dissertation.
So mathematically, I would say a series is 3, but I wouldn't want to hold somebody to that dire situation. So, but at least it's more than 1. Anything else? Okay. So there's our contact information. Again, don't forget the second K or I'll never receive it. And if that's it, we'll just wrap up for this section and we'll start the next section shortly.
Testing, testing, A, B, C, good, okay.
Good, thank you.
Mhm. Okay, guys, it's 3 o'clock. I'm going to go ahead and get started. This is surviving the submission process. We're going to talk about submitting to the graduate school. I'll get to that in the next slide. I am curious, how many of you are looking to graduate this summer? Okay. Fall? Okay. I've got those deadlines, and I'll let you know what they are. I've got those with me. Okay. It's all slow. Add these animations. Okay, so we're going to talk about the paperwork involved in this process in order of priority, the deadlines, what's involved with uploading, the review process, the editing process, and also final approval. Okay, I'm talking about a priority because I get asked often, in what order do things need to be turned in? And if you're not working around the deadline time, you can turn things in at any point. I'm just gathering stuff, and once I get everything, then I move forward. But in and around the deadline time, there is an order of priority of what you want to focus on getting me to ensure that you make the list for graduation and that I can start reviewing your thesis or dissertation. So first, to meet the deadline, you must upload your committee-approved thesis or dissertation to Digital Commons. You've just got to get it to me, and you've got to get it to me in the right spot. And I'll show you what that looks like here in a minute. So that's your priority, upload to Digital Commons. I create a report from Digital Commons. I send that to the program specialists. They send that list on to the graduation office. It's a whole, within a couple of days, everybody knows who's in the running for graduation. So you want to upload, providing it's your committee-approved thesis or dissertation. If it's not been approved, you're not cleared to upload. But that's your first priority right around deadline time. In order for me to begin my review, I have to have the Turnitin report and the manuscript review form. We're also going to look at what these are as well. And then everything else on the checklist to turn in, I can gather throughout the review process, but I must have everything in before you can receive final approval. So this is the order. And as we go through this PowerPoint, I'm going to hit on everything that's on this checklist. This is the first paper, our first page in the packet that I handed out. Is there anybody online? No. Okay, never mind, I won't address you. So we're going to hit on everything on this checklist. If you follow this checklist start to finish, you will have completed everything you need to complete for this process. It's all on one page. It's doable. All right. Uploading. What to do to upload. Convert your final word process document in whatever format it's, or whatever software you've used, the word processing document, convert that to PDF. Look through the PDF to make sure there's no surprises. If you've gotten creative in your word processing and you've done some interesting spacing, it may show up in the PDF. So check that before uploading to me. Sometimes pages can skip.
Your figures can be weird, so check that out before you upload. Then you will go to the ETD website and click on Get Account. And this is the link. I have a screenshot next that will look at what that looks like. You'll create an account and log in. And I want to make note that this submission is a separate procedure than uploading to D2L to run the Turnitin report. When you go to run the Turnitin report, you'll need to go through D2L for that. Some students have been confusing that upload with this upload. They are two separate things. So Digital Commons is where you'll upload your thesis for review, and D2L and Turnitin are separate from this process. So note that. So when you click on Get Account from the ETD website, you'll see this, and you will not go ahead and log in. You have to create an account first. This is a separate system from the ETSU system, so if you try to log in using your ETSU username and password, then it won't work. So you'll have to sign up first. When you click on Sign Up down here at the bottom, you'll see this. You can use your ETSU username and password to sign up for this, this program. I actually encourage you to. It's something you use all the time to log in with. You might as well keep it the same so you don't forget it. If you do forget it, they do have a recovery feature, but it will take your ETSU info. So email, ETSU email if you want. You can use any other email if that works better for you, work email, whatever. First name, last name, password, and then confirm your password. That will create your account. Let me see what I do here. Okay. Once you create your account, you will go back and log in back to this page, and you will fill out, well, you'll agree to some terms, and then you'll fill out your name, your abstract, your committee members' names. It'll be a whole thing that you go in and fill in the fields. This is creating the profile that will be on Digital Commons where your thesis download will be. So take care and make sure, especially spelling your committee members' names is accurate. I won't always know if it's accurate or not. I do go through and check your profile before we approve and it's posted, but there's some things I'm not going to know. So if you're rushing through, don't. Take care. This is the profile that will represent you on our library's database, so make sure it's accurate. At the very bottom of that, after you've entered everything, it'll have a Browse button, and that's where you'll find your file and upload, and click Submit, and then that sends it to me. Okay, so that's how you upload. All right, on to paperwork. The Turnitin report is set up by your committee chair. It could also be somebody else on your committee, but it needs to be a faculty member. Our license for Turnitin is only for faculty. It's not accessible by students directly. So in order to run this report, you've got to go through a faculty member, typically your chair, sometimes a committee member. So student and chair need to examine the results, not just student, at least your chair. You may or may not need to examine them, but at least your chair needs to examine the results. This is something that they sign off on one of these forms that certifies. I have read and looked at the Turnitin report, so they need to do it. This report is not something that I look at, that I don't record the score. I simply get the report and I file it. So going through it and making sure whatever it flagged is something that you're looking at. If you need to make any changes, that's up to you and your committee to get that done. And yeah, there is a 20 megabyte limit to upload to the Turnitin program. So if you've got a very large file, usually it's images or video that's causing that issue. So you can take those out. Turnitin is for running text only, so it doesn't matter if there's images in there or not. Take those out and then run the text through the program. If your committee chair needs support, and they often do because one may run a report every other year and they forget how to do it, it's understandable. We have a good support page, but more importantly on this support page is a contact person. Her name is Chelsea Dubé. She's awesome, and she has helped faculty each time. So if you go to your chair and you say, I need this Turnitin report, they say, what are you talking about? Or I forget how to do that, refer them to this page or me, and I can send it on to them. All right. That's it. Okay, so download the Turnitin report in PDF format and email it to me. At this point, either you or your chair can download this report and send it to me. So I know it's already gone through the committee member. You can't create it without going through them, so it's okay for you to go ahead and send it to me at that time. But there is a specific way to get it in PDF format. There's a receipt option, and then there's a full report option, like a full view. I do not want the receipt. I need the full report. But we can work that out at the time if that's confusing. If the report itself is over 20 megabytes, this is the magic number, you can send it to me via ETSU Dropbox. I do have a Google Drop account, but that's a personal account. I mean, there's other ways you can get it to me, but this is something we all have access to. So if your chair, you need to get it to me and it's too big, you can go to the ETSU Dropbox and send it that way. Okay, the next thing is fill out the manuscript review form. That's the second page in your packet. And I say fill it out with your committee because there's a few things on here that'll hold you up or hold me up from starting my review if it's not filled out, and that just delays things. So if you have a chance to fill this out and with your committee chair and make sure he or she gets everything marked, then that will be helpful. At the very top of the form, it's a late add, so it's been squished in there up at the top, but it is a grade change question. It's kind of a long statement and then a yes or a no. Your committee chair needs to answer this. This is information I pass along to the program specialists, and the graduation office will not process your information unless this grade change has happened, so that's an important one to point out. Also, your committee chair must read and sign toward the bottom. This is where I was talking about they certify that they've read the Turnitin report. It says, I've read and approved this manuscript, I reviewed the Turnitin report, and it meets best practice for citation, and it conforms to the style guides. So that's what your chair is signing there at the bottom. All the other committee members will sign, and you will sign at the very bottom. The rest of it is general information that I do need, so be sure it's filled out correctly. Okay, and all signatures are required. Okay, and this is summer, so finding your committee members is tough. Finding your committee members can be tough regardless, but in the summer, they typically take off into wherever. So gathering signatures in the summer especially can be difficult. It is a good try, I guess, if you can get everybody to sign at the defense, if they're happy with what you defended. If it's a successful defense, they're all happy with everything, they're good to go, they're ready to sign right there. You've got them all in one room. See if that is possible. If not, some departments will route the form for you. I know the Ed Leadership Department will route the form around for you. Your committee members, sometimes I've seen the committee chair will route the form around and help you out. Otherwise, it's up to you to get all the signatures on that form. And if you're dealing right around deadline time, that can be a very panicky moment if you don't have access to somebody. So other issues can be, again, if somebody's on vacation, they've taken off, and you don't have access to them to get their original signature, there's a couple of options. You can scan the form to them. They can sign it and scan it back. As long as the scan is clear, I can accept it. Or another committee member can sign on their behalf, as long as I have permission, like via email. Dr. So-and-so can sign on my behalf, the email's forwarded to me, signatures are gathered, we're all good. Okay. Cool. All right. So continuing with the submission process, you'll continue to follow that checklist of requirements and turn in all the remaining forms that apply to you. Not all of them will apply to you. On the checklist, continuing on, is the ETSU ETD release form. That is the next page in your packet. This is where you will decide access for your thesis or dissertation here at ETSU. We have 3 options: unrestricted, restricted, and withheld. And the descriptions of those are on the form. And you will check which one you want down at the bottom, sign and date. Okay. So after choosing, well, next will be the Proquest form. After choosing the access level from the ETSU ETD release form, so make that choice first, you will follow the instructions that are provided. Now, I've actually given those to you. Those are the next several pages in this packet. If you lose this somehow, the link to these instructions are on the checklist. So after you've chosen unrestricted, restricted, or withheld, you'll move on to these instructions that will tell you exactly what to do to fill out the Proquest form. The Proquest form is 6 or 7 pages long. It contains codes at the end that you'll then use to fill it out. But pages 4 and 5 in the Proquest form are the only ones I need, and those are the last 2 pages in your packet. So use the instructions depending on the access level you choose, and you can fill out the form from there. And these are very detailed instructions. I used to go through this and I would confuse everybody, but I've really gotten it clear right here. So if we have time at the end and you're confused about what to pick, we can talk about that. But I usually take up the whole hour, so I'm going to keep going. Okay. All right. Okay. Going on down the checklist, we also ask for an IRB memo, if applicable, if you went through the IRB and got a determination of exempt or approved, or sometimes, recently they've been sending a letter that says we didn't even need to look at your paper. If you got any one of those memos, I need to have that on file. Survey of earned doctorates, if applicable. On the checklist, there's about 6 programs that have to do this, well, it is required, and the codes for each program is out to the right. These are PhD only, so no EDD, no DRPH, PhD only. So if you're not on this list, you don't need to fill this out. All right, and pay the microfilm fee by the deadline listed in the academic calendar, and there's a link to that academic calendar. Here I can talk about deadlines since we're mentioning that. The microfilm fee is a little later than everything else, so I'll give you time to gather up some more change. But we want to talk about this summer. The deadlines are to complete, and by the way, these dates are on the grad school website, they're on the ETD website, they're also in the academic calendar, but I'll go ahead and lay them out for you. To complete your oral defense, back up. To schedule your oral defense, that needs to be scheduled no later than June 25th, so that's coming up. You gotta get that scheduled with the grad school. To complete your oral defense, no later than July 9th. Okay, and the last day to upload your committee-approved thesis, that's 1 week later, that's July 16th. Okay, that's the date, July 16th, that you need to have that upload to me on or before that day. And then the microfilm fee deadline is August 6th, and that's just a few days before the semester ends, which is August 10th. And August 10th is the deadline for final approval of the thesis or dissertation. So we have about 4 weeks from when I get it from you. I think it's 3 weeks actually, from when I get it from you to when we get final approval. Okay. Anybody want to hear fall? Yeah, okay. Fall will be, to schedule your oral defense, it's October 22nd. Complete oral defense, November 5th. The initial version submission to me is due on November 12th or before. Microfilm fee deadline is December 10th, and the last day to finish with me is December 12th. Which again, that's right before graduation. So it's a fun time. All right. All right, moving on down the checklist a little bit more, I have on there that I need permissions. If you have used exact copies of images that you did not create, I need you to demonstrate that they are okay to use, or send me the permission from the creator of that image. So the images are visual representations of an idea, or data or a process. So they're subject to more protection than text. Okay? What you should do if you need to use an image that you did not create, investigate where you're getting that from. If you're just going on Google Images and pulling the first thing off that you see, you don't know the origin of where that came from. You don't know if there's permission for that person or that entity to use that. So investigate where it's coming from and try to get the original if possible. I think Google has actually done something recently to protect this. They don't let you just go on and grab anymore. They make you go to the website to actually get the original image. So there's more and more protections out there for images, so we need to be careful. There's actually something going on in the U.S. Copyright Office right now that artists and photographers are asking for more and more protection because everybody's just grabbing their work. So you can't just go out there and grab stuff and use it. Investigate where it's coming from. And let me see if I have, no, okay. There are websites out there that declare that it's free to use, like Pixabay or Creative Commons is also one that includes all of those that are free to use. So there's also copyright clearance centers that you can go through to declare that this is okay to use. So there's ways to find out. So if you're not sure, investigate. Okay. And some websites say this is okay to use right there. The Appalachian Regional Commission has a statement right on their website that says, you can use any of the maps on here. Good to go. Don't contact us. Just show me that and we're good. Permissions are also needed for large sections of quoted material. That's like a play or a screenplay. An entire poem like Beowulf, you can't just insert that directly in. Survey instruments, most of you, if you're using one that is not your own, you've gotten permission to use it, but some forget to get permission to display it in your appendix, so make sure you get both. If you're doing the alternate format and your journal articles have already been published, the journal is the copyright owner of that journal article, so you need to get permission from them to insert that article into your work. Even though it's yours, it's now they own the copyright. Okay, so citing images, if you have one that you need to cite, place a citation at the end of each figure for images that were used with permission or adapted. So we see here, this is the same figure. If you got permission to use it, include your citation, whichever citation format you need. If you have adapted it, that means you've used your own software, or not your own software, but you've used tools to redraw this. You don't need to get permission. You just cite adapted from and then the source, because you have redrawn the same idea. Don't look at this too close, you science people. This is not a direct, I've been trying to find better examples of this. But just to illustrate that you take the person's original illustration and you can redraw it, and you don't need to get permission. Because this is now your visual representation of the process or the idea. But it did come from another source. Okay. I'm going to encourage you a little bit to at least think about using multimedia in your thesis or dissertation. It's just multimedia is using more than one medium of communication because it's possible and because other students out there are doing it and it's getting a little more competitive. If you want to stand out to an employer, if you want to take this to a conference, when you're done, including video, audio, and animations is a good idea if you've got any of that, accessible to you. There's a website, lynda.com. It is subscription-based. You can start and stop per month, but it has really good tutorials on it on how to do videos and animations. There's also really good tutorials on YouTube. I use those all the time to make my own stuff in the grad school. And ATS has one-on-one support for GAs or TSs. If you're a GA or a TS, then you have the same access to workshops that faculty and staff do. And if you do decide to include a video, of course, if there's human subjects involved, you must run that by the IRB or include that in your IRB submission. So think ahead on that one. Okay, so what I'm going to do in the review process, I'm going to do a format check, and I'm going to check for general things from the graduate school thesis dissertation guide, so general formatting, and then that the title page, the abstract, table of contents, lists of tables and figures, all of those examples have been matched. You've followed the flow of what we asked you to do. And then I'm also going to look at, I have a general knowledge of these citation styles per your discipline. So I'll be checking to make sure you followed those as well. So the grad school general guidelines, there's a lot more than this, but I'm going to go through the handful of ones that have been brought up most at these workshops that students would like to know. So your margins, at least 1 inch. We get really skinny out there. It looks a little weird. Some universities have very strict rules. Here at ETSU, we give you a general idea. Most of all, just be consistent, but this is a general idea of what to stick to. So at least 1 inch on all sides. Use a standard font or font size throughout. So your standard fonts would be Times New Roman, Calibri, Arial, things like that. Also, if you choose anything too exciting, then Adobe Acrobat, when converting to PDF, may not convert it correctly. So just stick to standard font. Your page numbers, no Roman numerals, even if you're a history major or liberal arts. So you're going to number starting on page 2, which will be your abstract, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then on. Your title page will not have a page number. And they're going to be centered at the bottom of each page. No running headers. That's common in some classes, but not for your thesis or dissertation. Table titles will go above the table, and figure captions will go below the figure. That's for all disciplines. Okay. Your references will either be hanging indent or numbered. Chemistry, math, and biology or biomedical can have the option to number. Everyone else should use the hanging indent format. Do we all know what that is? Okay, anybody? Okay. Double check that text and images are at the top margin of every page. This is not as easy to do in a Word document because even though you can page down, it's still kind of scrolly. If you have it in the PDF, it's easier to page, and you can see if something jumps down or not. So check that top margin on each page. You've been copying and pasting and inserting and doing all kinds of fun things. Things can get out of alignment there. It's okay to look up recently approved theses or dissertations in your discipline to use as a model, recently within the last year. There's not been a lot of changes to this, so look at what's been approved, and you know you're good if you're matching that. Okay, so for the standard format, this is the order in which things are going to be. Just a reminder, all of this is in the thesis dissertation guide, taken directly out of it. Title page is first, no page number, abstract will be page 2. Copyright, a dedication, and acknowledgements are all optional. And then your table of contents, list of tables and figures. If you have more than 5, have a list of tables and figures. You don't have to. If you have fewer, you can. If you have 1 table or figure, don't make a list. Then the body of the manuscript follows that. Then your bibliography, references, or works cited depending on your style guide. And then the appendix or appendices, you do not have to have an appendix. If you've got supplemental material that will help your reader better understand what you've done, include it in the appendix. No IRB forms. That's a relatively recent thing that the IRB recommended and that the graduate school agreed and approved, that we do not want you to put any IRB forms. No consent, no approvals, none of that in the appendix. And then the vita. Mm-hmm.
If there's any figure or appendix, do we need to list it on the table of figures?
No, in the appendix, no. And you'll see in the style, thesis dissertation guide and the example, the appendices will be listed as part of your table of contents and not in your list of tables and figures. But if you have tables and figures in your appendix, then yes, you can include them there. That I see what you're saying. Because in your table of contents, it would be Appendix C, tables and figures. And then in the list of tables and figures, you can include the numbers there. Yes, sir.
Can't understand if you're trying to say that the tables are supposed to have titles.
They do, yes. Your tables need to have a table title, and it'll go above the table. They need to be numbered also, so table 1, 2, 3, 4, but table 1, and then a title for that at the
But
top.
if you have more than 5,
Okay.
what's the point of giving them a title if you're not going to have more than 5?
In the body of the text, they need to have a table title. In the list of tables, in the beginning of the document, you don't have to have a list if you've got fewer than 5. If you have more, throughout the body of the text.
So if you have fewer than 5, you still need titles?
Yes, throughout the body, yeah. Okay. All right, the alternate format is the same flow as the standard format, but there are a few differences. I'll go ahead and through this. Chapter 1 is an introduction or including a statement of hypothesis. Chapter 2, we read some of this in the first section, but it's one journal article for a thesis or a series of journal articles for a dissertation, and they're presented as separate numbered chapters. These articles should be in the format that they would be when published. So if you've got if you're submitting to a journal, sometimes all the figures are at the end. You need to go ahead and put them in the body of the journal article. It needs to have your abstract, your authors, just in the same exact flow it would be if it were submitted to a journal. So we wanted a standalone article. And that's actually to help you, if you're preparing it for publication, to go ahead and get it in that format. And I won't be looking at these very closely because I don't know all the journals out there. I don't know their styles. So it's up to you to get it in the proper style guide or style format for that journal. Okay, dissertations must have a final summary chapter, and a thesis advisory committee may or may not request this, but it's not required. And the other difference is that tables and figures are to be numbered by chapter. So say you have chapter 2 as a standalone article, it's got its own set of figures, figure 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, but it is in chapter 2, so you've got a couple of figures in chapter 1, 1, 2, 3. That's going to be confusing to the readers. So in chapter 1, you've got 1.1, 1.2, and so on. Chapter 2 will be 2.1. So that is one change you'll have to make in the body of those articles. Cool. All right. Follow the sample pages in the thesis dissertation guide exactly for the title page. And we have samples for all of these in the guide. We also have templates for a few of these. I'll mention which ones those are in just a second. The abstract that's the only paragraph formatting that's unindented. It's a cataloging issue, so don't indent that paragraph in the abstract. And if you're doing a thesis, it's 150 words or less. I will be counting. That's another cataloging issue. And dissertations are 350 or less, 350 words or fewer. Then the table of contents follows that, list of tables and figures, if you have enough of those following that. And then the vita is at the end and limit it to no more than 2 pages of the most recent and relevant information. So if you have a resume or a curriculum vita that you've been building, you need to rework that for this. It's going to be in the exact format that is shown in the thesis guide, and it needs to be a condensed version to just most recent and relevant info, no more than 2 pages. So that's something that you'll need to rework there. Okay, so headings and subheadings. This is what, again, these examples are in the thesis guide. The chapter headings are in all caps and centered. And then first level subheadings are centered. They can either be underlined or italicized, but whatever you choose, be consistent. Second level subheading is flush with the left margin. Third level subheading is begins the paragraph, it's indented, and it's in sentence style. Okay? If you are using APA, and you have, see, we only offer 3 levels here. APA users, they have their own way of doing headings and subheadings because they offer how to handle these if you've got more than 3. They have up to 5. So you can do that. We just ask that you blend this a little bit and continue to have the chapter heading in caps in the center, and then start APA formatting below that. So the first level subheading will be centered and boldface. This is APA style, and following APA from there. Okay. Otherwise, if you're doing strictly APA, your first level subheading would be this. But for a thesis dissertation at ETSU, we want you to have the main heading like that. Okay. All right. So I will be checking in-text citation formatting. This is regarding your departmental style guide, APA, ASA, CSE. This is what I'll be checking. In-text citation formatting, table and figure caption formatting, which really only APA and CSE has their specifications on, and then reference formatting. I am familiar with all the style guides. I am not an expert. People tend to think I am. You and your committee more so, should really be the expert in how these things are supposed to be formatted. They are writing and working in that style and in that discipline, so if anybody, they should be the experts, but I am here to help if you need. You are responsible for writing in the style of your discipline. You're responsible for grammar, punctuation, and sentence structure. You are responsible for chapter organization and flow, you and your committee. And also ensuring quoted and paraphrased material is cited. That's what the Turnitin report can help you make sure you got done correctly. And clarity and continuity. At one point, the grad school had a reader. We no longer have him. It's been several years. That would help with these things, but it's all back on you and your committee to get this right. I will not be reading these. Okay, I'm looking at format and other specifications. So if you think it's coming to the grad school for an editing job, it's not. All right, so what's going to happen, I will be sending back, you submit the PDF to me, I'll be making notes on it. They're going to kind of look like this, little sticky notes in the PDF, and I will be sending the PDF back to you via email. Make your corrections in your word processing document, convert it back to PDF, and then resubmit through Digital Commons. You should expect at least 2 rounds, and how quickly you finish depends on when you submit and if your paperwork is all in and how many corrections are needed. So if you submit in February, I could have you done in a week because I'm not really busy then. But if you submit around deadline time, there is a flow of how long it takes. 2 weeks for me to get through everybody's, another week to get the resubmissions, and then final week is cleanup. But, so I get that question often, how long is it gonna take? It depends.
So I think you said July 16th was the deadline to have the manuscript submitted.
Mm-hmm.
Is that after edits, or is that for the first round to you?
First round to me.
Okay.
Yeah. So then we got about 3 weeks to go through what I was talking, all the sticky notes and back and forth.
Okay.
Okay, we're almost done, guys. Final approval, dean review. Dr. Kirkby will look over the final manuscript. He does read the acknowledgments and the dedication. Again, I don't read anything, but he's checking that, and he'll check your vita. He always finds something, so expect a few comments from him. And then once I've got approval from him that it's all good, then an automated email will be sent. I'll process it, and you'll get an email that says, congratulations, you're all done. And I'll forward that also to your chair, so he or she knows. So we've talked about this. The initial deadline, fall and spring are about 4 weeks. Summer is a little bit less prior to graduation. So that seems like a lot of time, but I can get up to 80 or 90 submissions, especially in the spring. So it's rough. That's the amount of time I need to get through them all. The final deadline is about 3 days before graduation. You don't want to be there. but I've never had anybody not make graduation just based on, I can't get through stuff. It's never been on my watch. I've always been able to get everybody through. If anything holds you up, it's usually permission issues. So again, a student not knowing that they need permission for something that's vital to their thesis or dissertation, that will hold you up. Otherwise, we get it done. And then, of course, you must have final approval by Dean Kirkby before the deadline, that final deadline to graduate. Okay, I think that's it. Any questions? That was a lot.
In the reference section, is there any specific guideline for spacing? Like I have seen a lot of cases with the double spacing. So is there any guideline?
From the graduate school, no, as long as you're consistent. I do know APA asks for a specific way to do it, but there are some departments using APA that have said, no, we're not gonna do it this way. We're gonna do single space with a double space between. As long as what you choose is consistent. It can be 0.5 spacing with 1 space between, as long as you're consistent throughout.
No specific guideline for that one, so we can choose.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
There is no guideline. I was just wondering if there's any guideline for making a spacing for the reference.
I'm sorry.
Just for the reference section, is there any guideline or we can just have?
For the different disciplines, different guidelines?
No, I don't think our department is specified for that particular reason.
Oh.
It's just like I've seen the old cases or the dissertation. Some of them have done double spacing. Some of them have just a single spacing. So I was not sure whether we need to
Okay, so
choose this one or that one.
Okay. Within a department, it can fluctuate per paper, I see what you're saying. I wouldn't notice that, you know, if a biology thesis came in one way and another biology thesis was different, they were both consistent when they're within their own document, and so that would pass by me. Some departments want all of their biology thesis or ed leadership to be all the same, and they handle that in-house. But, yeah. So, you know, some of you want directions. I've worked with universities before that have very, very specific directions, and it can get very difficult, so I like to keep it, you know, as general as possible within, you know, consistency is important. Just make the document look good, like you took the time to care about what it looks like, and that's what we're looking for. All right. Anybody else? Okay. Happy day. We're a little early. I've got 2 email addresses there. One of them, I might have a future student working with me, but if you get an email from either one of those, that's me. Okay. Thank you. Oh, you're welcome.
Is that your sign-up sheet over there for the
Yes.
PowerPoint?
I've got you on there for the first one, so I'll send you both. Okay. Oh,